Voice up if I'm the only one here.
Here we go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Solid Rock. Tonight, the good news is we have Jen, so it's not just me on camera, and we have some more discussion going on. The bad news is that means we're using both mics, so I'm not sure how well you'll be able to hear the room for people online.
Go Jen, fire.
But, so John 13 is not quite as full as John 12. It's a bit shorter, but there's plenty to look at, so we're not going to dilly-dally in this, so let's pray and get started. Lord, I thank you once again for the opportunity to open your word, to see what you have to say to us, and to just have a chance for you to speak to us through the words and actions recorded so long ago, and to apply them to our lives here in 2025. Just give us wisdom as we make our way through it. Amen.
Amen. So we're on John 13.
Yes.
All right. Well, as Nathan always says, we're just going to read straight through it because this is much better than what he or I could ever say. So in John 13, before the Passover celebration, Jesus knew that his hour had come to leave this world and return to his Father. He had loved his disciples during his ministry on earth, and now he loved them to the very end. It was time for supper, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had given him authority over everything, and that he had come from God and would return to God. So he got up from the table, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into the basin. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel he had around him. When Jesus came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus replied, You don't understand. You don't understand now what I'm doing, but someday you will." "No," Peter protested, "you will never wash my feet." Jesus replied, "Unless I wash you, you won't belong to me." And Simon Peter explained, "Then wash my hands and my head as well, Lord, not just my feet." Jesus replied, "A person who is bathed all over does not need to wash, except for the feet, to be entirely clean. And you disciples are clean, but not all of you." For Jesus knew who would betray him. That is not what he meant when he said, or that is what he meant when he said, "Not all of you are clean." After washing their feet, he put on his robe again and sat down and asked, "Do you understand what I was doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. I tell you the truth. Slaves are not greater than their master, nor is the messenger more important than whoever sends the message. Now you will know these things, and God will bless you for doing them. I'm not saying these things to all of you. I know the ones I have chosen, but this fulfills the scripture that says, the one who eats my food has turned against me. I tell you this beforehand, so that when it happens, you will believe that I am the Messiah. I tell you the truth. Anyone who welcomes my messenger is welcoming me. Anyone who welcomes me is welcoming the Father who sent me. Now Jesus was deeply troubled, and he exclaimed, I tell you the truth. One of you will betray me. The disciples looked at each other, wondering whom he could mean. The disciple Jesus loved was sitting next to Jesus at the table, and Simon Peter motioned to him to ask, who's he talking about? So that disciple leaned over to Jesus and asked, Lord, who is it? Jesus responded, it is the one to whom I give the bread I dip in the bowl. And when he had dipped it, he gave it to Judas, son of Simon Iscariot. When Judas had eaten the bread, Satan entered into him. Then Jesus told him, hurry and do what you're going to do. None of the others at the table knew what Jesus meant. Since Judas was their treasurer, some thought Jesus was telling him to go and pay for the food or give some money to the poor. So Judas left at once, going out in the night. As soon as Judas left the room, Jesus said, the time has come for the Son of Man to enter into his glory. For God will be glorified because of him. And since God receives glory because of the Son, he will soon give glory to the Son. Dear children, I will be with you only a little longer. And as I told the Jewish leaders, you will search for me, but you can't come where I am going. So now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other, just as I have loved you. You should love each other. For your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. I messed that up. I'm reading it again because it's a good one. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. Simon Peter asked, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus replied, you can't go with me now, but you'll follow me later. But why can't I come now, Lord? He asked. I'm ready to die for you. And Jesus answered, die for me? I tell you the truth, Peter. Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny me 3 times, you will deny 3 times that you even know me. And that's where it cuts off just really super abruptly.
Yeah, chapter markers are this
not a great thing.
artificial invention, and we give them too much credit. Because they do things like that and go, oh, what do you?
I feel like there was like there was a response or something. Yeah.
Next week.
Let's probably look at the notes.
So
much in here. Oh my gosh.
All right. So of course we start out with this whole thing of washing the feet. And that's weird to us. I don't know if everybody in the room knows or people online, but if you're familiar with, in simple terms, this is a culture where people wore sandals and open shoes, and it's a very dry and dusty area, and there's animals like making messes on the roads and stuff. So
your feet are always
nasty.
Dirty.
Feet are nasty now, but feet were really nasty then. And now our feet are nasty for whole different reasons because we wear shoes and they get sweaty and gross. But
it wasn't good.
And so it was when you came in, they're doing this thing, they're at a meal, and it's a table kind of like the one that you can't see on the camera, but it's like this one, that it's a low table. Yeah, that my feet are on.
I don't think they can see.
They're not sitting.
They can't see.
No, they're not.
It's like this.
You're not sitting in chairs around a dining room table like we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
This was like laying on the floor, maybe like on a pillow or something. And it's actually even a footnote in this Bible, but it explains like it was kind of, they had adopted the Roman custom of you lean on your left elbow and you eat with your right hand. And so they're just like lounging around a nice low table, laying on the floor. So
They're
your
in
feet
reclining
are here
position.
next to, so your feet are next to the guy next to you.
Yeah.
And when your feet are nasty, that's extra gross while we're eating, especially if you've stepped in something today. And so, not surprisingly, the idea of having someone wash people's feet, particularly when you're coming in for a nice meal and stuff, was a thing. But it's a job that nobody wants. And so it was always like the lowest servant, the person at the bottom of the totem pole is the one who has to wash the feet. Because you don't get to. This is a thing that is like, no, I'm not doing it, you do it. Like you pass the buck on that one until someone can't get out of it. And there's tons of speculation in all the different commentaries and things as to why this was going on, that they're here and no one had done it. But it was, you can bet that it was this awkward thing of like, they're all realizing that there's not a foot washer, that no one's doing it, but nobody wants to say anything because nobody's stepping up to volunteer and say, I'll do it. And that's why it's earth-shattering to them when Jesus, like without even saying anything, just steps in and does it.
Well, he doesn't just step in and do it. I mean, there's a process to it. He gets up from the table, he takes off his robe, he wraps a towel around himself. I'm assuming that this is a cultural, either it's a way of keeping your garments clean or it's a cultural way of showing subservience. I don't know which it would be, but there's significance in there.
Some of both.
He prepares himself to wash their feet. And it's not
and
just...
so like when they see him getting up and taking off the robe and putting the towel around his waist, and they're like, what is he doing? And it's like,
but notice that he got around to a few people before somebody said, wait a minute. I mean, like they didn't get it, but they weren't questioning him right up front.
Well, it's, I don't know.
He got around
it can
to
be
Peter.
that, but it's also like most of them, bear in mind, most scholars think that Peter's the only one who's over 20 years old. So most of these guys are like teenagers. And Jesus is like the highly respected rabbi at the very least. And they're coming into fairly confident that he's more than just a rabbi. And so it's like when he's doing stuff, it's like,
who's to question him?
You don't speak up and you don't tell him like, no, you can't do that. And it's like, yeah, he's done some crazy stuff. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess he's doing this now. And everyone's too afraid to say anything except Peter, who's never afraid to speak up.
I can feel that. I'm definitely a Peter. That's my personality.
I see a question.
I'm sorry, what? Judas? Oh, there's so much speculation about the fact that he was a treasurer. It indicates he was the most trusted disciple, not necessarily from Jesus because he knew what was going on, but from the rest of them. Who do you give the money to? The person you trust the least or the person you trust the most?
I'm just kind of like teenager.
Well, but
this is a different culture too. Kids grew up fast back then.
Most teenagers were married and had families.
Yeah, you were getting married and having children at 14 and 15 years old. So,
think of this. This is like Jesus is a professor and this is his class.
Yes.
Because he's the rabbi and these are his disciples.
So
That's
they're assuming it's a Mr. Miyagi thing, and he's just coming. I guess I don't know.
We're gonna wax on and we'll see what happens.
I'm not sure what he's doing, but it usually shows us something, so we'll let it go.
They've seen enough time. That's a good point. That they've seen enough times at this point Jesus do things that they had no idea what was going on, but then he explains it. So they're probably just going, here comes another lesson. He's gonna
we'll see what comes next.
And he does. And I mean, you get to like verse 13 or so, and he starts explaining it. But yeah, we can't skip over Peter, who of course
love it. He's like, you can't wash my feet. Oh, wait a minute, you can go head to toe. Let's not miss anything.
But you gotta love the question though. It's like, Lord, are you gonna wash my feet? And it's like, no, Peter, I washed everybody else, but no, that's not what I'm doing. Like, he asks ridiculous questions. He says things all the time. Peter's great because every one of us can identify with Peter. Like,
I
I'm glad
certainly
he's in
can.
here.
Mhm.
So then, because all the rest of the disciples just sit back going,
He's the guy who says what everyone is thinking, and everybody else is like, okay, took one for the team. He was always
Yeah.
taking
Everyone's
one
like,
for
I'm
the
glad you
team.
said it.
Always. Yeah, probably.
I was just in conversation online with Tanya about the idea. I was like, that's such a humbling experience that Jesus himself washed their feet.
Yeah.
And I was putting myself in that position. I'm like, okay, here's what you need to know. The context of this being, I'm a former massage therapist. I'm no stranger to stanky feet. I'm no stranger to massaging stanky feet. However, in a situation like that, I'm imagining, for me, it works to view it as if I were to wash the feet of those I serve with, or even
There would be extra care involved.
in the room right now, just to be like, you know what, impromptu, I'm gonna wash your feet. It's not like you guys came prepared, with your feet already. Okay, let's not have a pedicure. Not even anything like that. Just you've been working all day on your feet in your nasty shoes.
It was a total act of service. It was
to humble myself.
Mhm.
It really does take intentionality, and to get over myself, to get over the ew, but their toes are nasty and sweaty, and like we were just saying, it's like, especially then, because we were just watching The Chosen last night, and you saw a character like step right in dung, and that's the reality of it. It was dusty, desert, nasty, like, especially depending on where they were going and where they were ministering, because some of the places were like ghetto and the nastiest of the nasty parts of town.
Mm-hmm.
And so it puts it into perspective, just discussing that with Tanya about like that's true humility. And Jesus himself did it then in much nastier circumstances. But being honest with myself, I would really have a hard time doing it today.
And
But if Jesus did it then.
But it's also, think of the other side of it. Imagine from the disciples' perspective. Like,
That's what I was gonna say.
picture the person that you admire and respect the most
Doing
like
the most humbling act of
taking
service.
your nasty shoes and socks off and washing your gross feet when you know darn well how gross
You'd
they
almost
are.
be like, yeah, no, I'm good.
And it, like,
It's
because
okay.
and that's Peter going, you're not gonna wash my feet. I don't even have feet. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, and I love it. The way Jesus responds, though, is that, he's like, you don't understand what I'm doing now, but you will eventually. He's always like that. Like, you don't get it right now, but it'll come. But I love what he follows it with. Unless I wash you, you won't belong to me. And that's almost, especially when he comes in later talking about love one another as I have loved you. We belong to each other when we do serve each other, when we do show up for each other.
Wash each other's feet, carry each other's burdens.
Exactly.
And Jesus understood what it was like to be the lowest of the low and the highest of the high. He understood all people from all perspectives.
and it's a thing that it's been a thing in Christian tradition through the years that there's some people that do like foot washings and stuff, and
We're
feel
not
that
gonna
it's an
do
important
that
thing
here.
to like literally
I'm gonna be
physically wash
absent
each other's
that
feet and stuff. And,
day.
like I've
Katie and I just ran 4 miles.
Yeah,
Right?
pass.
The only other thing I will add to that, one of the coolest examples, modern day examples I saw of this was when we were at a youth retreat, and it was one of the youth leaders, the pastor,
Mhm.
Oakley. It was kind of, I guess, an initiation almost of like a student that he had been mentoring through the years, and was like basically at the point where it's like, okay, now he's becoming a leader. And it's forever in my mind that this pastor, like, he was talking about this passage, and his initiation for this student was he had a thing of water and sat there and got on his knees and washed
The
his
symbolism
feet
of
in
it.
front of everybody. Like, I was sobbing. I'm like, oh my gosh.
But
Like,
if you
he
think
really-
about it, if this scripture didn't exist, the idea of even washing feet wouldn't even present anything for us to study in this culture. We might glance over it in study, but we would never read anything
Right.
into it because this is the only example I know of in scripture where anybody's washing anybody's feet. I mean, it's just not something we see. So it invites us to dig into a piece of their culture that we normally would easily skim over as just something they did then that we don't do now.
Mm-hmm. And it's weird. I don't even know what our discussion question is. How does Jesus' example challenge the way we serve others? That's exactly what we've been talking about. I hope you guys online can hear what we're talking about. I'm not sure how well you can hear it, but like it is this challenge of how we serve one another, and it's just it's a humility of Jesus, and it even says it at the beginning. Sorry, I'm getting lost, but it's Jesus knew that he had come from God and would go back to God, and he knew that the Father had given him complete power. So during the meal, he got up. And it's like, the reason Jesus did this was because he was so secure in who he was.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't need to posture. He didn't need to appear more important and be too good to do this job. And that was his point. That, like, I think that's the
It's
thing.
not about
It's what he was
you.
showing
It's
Peter when he said, look, you don't get it now, but you'll understand later. And it's John who wrote this line for us, because it's not something Jesus said in the moment, but it's like Jesus did this because of his perspective of knowing who he was and his identity and his mission and what he's doing here. And that's John understanding it later and explaining it to us. That it's like, no, you don't get what's going on, but you'll get it later. And this is just Jesus showing this is what it is to really love one another. To be willing to do whatever, like you said a minute ago. Then it's like from the highest high to the lowest of low. And it's like, and Jesus is like, and that's what he says down here in like verse 13. And it's like, you call me teacher and Lord, and you should, because that's who I am. And it's like, but if your Lord and teacher has washed your feet, you should do the same for each other. And I do not think this is, I do not think this is a command saying, like,
you have
if
to.
you're a Christian, you need to wash feet. We need to get in between the toes and do, like, but it's you need to humble yourself. You need to never think that you're more important than this task.
Never elevate yourself above this. And that's just kind of continuing that conversation. You said, just like serving others in church or in our community, we are not only sharing the love and light of Jesus with others, but we are drawing closer together. And that's another aspect of it. It's almost a very like intimate thing to get down on your knees and to get close enough to someone and take their feet in your hands and wash them. It's a very
it's very
because
personal.
it's a sense of vulnerability from the
yeah.
person. That's like, and you're putting yourself in a position that someone could like be like most people in the culture were, that it was like the master and the lowest servant that is just like, yes, wash my foot.
Right.
But also like when it's this thing going, wow, this is awkward because you are definitely way too good and important to be washing my feet. And but
it's so funny. He's like,
he's like,
when
just
he's like, oh,
breaking
you
down
can't
that wall.
belong to me until then. He's like, all right, head to toe, let's do it. But I love how Jesus takes this as an opportunity to go, that's not what you need. You say you're jumping on this because you're reading into what I'm saying, but that's not what you need.
Right.
You only need this one piece of it, and he uses it to call out, to show what's good about other people, but to call out what betrayal is coming.
I will share one more comment and then let you move on. Ron said, compare this to Mary washing Jesus. Because what you just said, you were just talking about like, oh, how awkward that would be. Sitting there and Jesus Christ is washing your feet. That's one thing.
And it makes you dig into the culture, because she's anointing his feet. She's taking it even a step further. I mean, she's putting like, it's not water she's pouring on there. It's a very ritualistic thing that she's doing.
But at the same time, although that did make a scene when she did that, it wasn't because of a status thing. It was just, my goodness, why are you being so lavish about it? But like for Mary, like a woman in this culture doesn't count for much. And so for Mary, someone who's grateful for something Jesus did to wash his feet, wasn't really raising any eyebrows.
Brother from the dead. She's like, she's very, I mean, and they were close before all of this, but to call her reverent is an understatement.
It's interesting how I've never noticed the correlation between her washing Jesus' feet in chapter 12 and then Jesus washing their feet in 13. That it's that one was a societal expected thing. Like, this is the woman, she is beneath him, she washes his feet. Yeah,
That
sure,
was
that makes
only
sense. I mean, she
the
got kind of
natural
carried away with the
response.
expensive perfume and stuff, but that's a normal thing. But then for Jesus to wash their feet, it's like, whoa, hang on, this is.
If anything, the person who's washing with expensive perfume would have an elevated status to the person who is just rinsing with water. I'm not sure that even matters. I don't know that they're very relevant and very comparable, but I feel like there's so much there. It's just you can get lost in that one.
I really like verse 12 that Jesus says, "Do you understand what I've done?" But then he just keeps right on going, doesn't give him a chance to answer because we all know, no, they don't. Like
I know the answer. I'm just pointing it out.
it's like, I just want you to point out and think about the fact that how confused you are about what I just did. Let me explain. And we've kind of covered the explanation, and we do need to move on because there's more than just foot washing in this chapter.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But yeah, I think the highlight of this section would be, to me, verse 15. It says, "I've set the example and you should do for each other what I've done for you." Because that's setting up what he's going to get to in like the second half of the chapter.
And it says, now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them. And I am not a person of karma. None of us want what we deserve. But we are blessed when we bless each other, even if it's just the fulfillment of seeing how much that blessing impacts somebody. You don't understand how selfish generosity is until you actually get there.
Well, and it's like the most common testimony you'll get from people who do service trips, whether it's like a thing in your own town or a short-term mission or whatever. But it's like so often we go and it's like, oh, we're going to go bless these needy people or whatever. And you come back going, oh my God, I was so blessed by doing that. And like, it's almost like Jesus really knew what he was talking about when he says it's more
the
blessed to give
blessing
than
is
to receive.
attached to
But-
it. It really is. When you are generous and when you are, a servant to people, the blessing is just, it's just ingrained in the act. And so you're definitely going to get that. I mean, I love it. I don't know
So-
where we were either.
Well, in verse 18, it's where all of a sudden Jesus shifts gears and starts talking about he's going to be
I'm
betrayed.
not talking about all of you.
Yeah. And it's like, you know these things and God will bless you if you do them. Now, I don't mean all of you. Like,
Not
I was like-
everybody.
It had to be a real moment where everyone was. It's like earlier he was like, "Do you understand?" And they're like, "They're derp, whatever." And this time he's like, "No, I don't mean all of you." And they're like, "Wait, what?" It's like now you got their attention for sure.
which is why we don't have it here in John, but in the other Gospels talking about this, when Jesus says, like, I don't mean all of you, one of you is going to betray me. And it's like they're all going through, oh, is it me?
Well, he even spells it out who it is and what he's doing, and he like who I'm dipping the bread in and handing it to, and he hands it to me. It's so obvious,
It's
and
so,
nobody gets it.
they still don't get it because,
Nobody, but I mean, Judas gets it. He knows, but nobody. And they're all like, huh? Maybe he went to pay a bill. Maybe he's got to tip the waitress. I mean, like, what? That's what it says. Maybe he's going to pay for the food. I mean, it's in there.
or give to the poor. But it's, yeah, and it goes to what you were saying earlier, that like Judas was like the most trusted. It's like, I heard a guy years ago, and it's like when Jesus said someone's going to betray him, like we read this with the benefit of hindsight, and we know exactly who it is. And it's like, don't read this thing and imagine that all the disciples are going, Judas, you Judas, I know. It's like nobody saw that.
Well, and you'll notice when John's writing it, he is very specific to say son of Simon Iscariot, because Judas was not an uncommon name. And so
there was another Judas among the disciples.
Yeah.
Jesus had a brother who went by Jude, but it's the same name.
Yeah.
It's Judas.
And so, I mean, we take it as we absolutely know who it is, but I mean, John is a couple of times defines him by his last name, the son of who he is. So even these people weren't guaranteed to know who they were talking about.
But
Ah,
it's just so crazy because Jesus has already several times told them like, I'm going to die. The Son of Man is going to be betrayed and he'll be tortured and killed and rise again in 3 days. He's been telling them that, but this is the first time he says, "Hey, one of you is going to betray me." Like that rocks their world so hard because it's like this is an intimate setting. They're having this special meal together. It's just the 13 of them there, presumably, and like he's just done this thing of washing their feet. He's taken it to next level. And then he goes, by the way, one of
so
you is
for
going to betray me.
everybody.
And like all these things that I'm talking about, what this means, yeah, it doesn't apply to all of you. And like imagine hearing that this stuff that he's doing, and he's just telling this incredible stuff, and it's like you need to serve one another and love each other. And I've given you this example to follow. And it's like, yeah, but not all of you, because at least one of you doesn't count. And it's like,
Yep. And
Wow.
it is interesting too because Jesus gets deeply troubled about it. And I believe with everything in me, they put that in here to give us the context that he's not like just no, one of you's gonna betray me.
It's
He
not like
is
tongue-in-cheek
he is this isn't for everyone in this room. I know there is someone here who is not with me. And he's maybe he kind of got that attitude more when he became deeply troubled, but
stuff.
I feel as though he was not casual about it. He used this opportunity to really lay in. This isn't for all of you.
Yeah.
which brings us to our second question of why do you think Judas' betrayal was not obvious to the others? And
I
it's
just think it's
everything we've been
funny because
saying.
they're whispering, like, somebody can't hear you when you're sitting right there whispering. They're like, who is he talking about? You want to ask him? Maybe.
Ron just said, we understand what Jesus meant by betrayed better than they probably did.
That is true,
Yeah,
but
we have
because
this-
betrayal can comes in layers or levels, and so betrayal to death is very different than
And like you said something bad about me.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. So they could have maybe not taken it as one of you is going to betray me because the way it ends, not to jump ahead, is the very last thing he says is Peter, you're going to betray me 3 times. So he's kind. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
There are levels of betrayal even within this chapter. That's interesting.
That John can't help inserting himself in, and it's like I was the one sitting there right next to him, and
The one
lean
that
back and
Jesus
say,
loved.
"Hey, yeah," and it's like, "Hey, Jesus, who is it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's the one I'm giving this bread to." And it's like, but
It'd be
even
like, oh, it's the one I'm giving this paper to, and everybody's like, I wonder who it is.
It's like,
Literally
and-
couldn't spell it out anymore.
and even like it's
oh my gosh,
they
that's
make
how
it point out
clueless they
that-
were.
that like it's like Peter got John's attention to get him to ask,
Hey,
and yeah, Simon motioned for that to someone who was like, hey, and so Simon got John to ask the question, which is the first time ever that Peter has not just spoken up and asked the question himself. Like this is significant enough that maybe Peter's going, I mess up a lot. I'm probably the one that's going to do this. John, ask him. Like, but for whatever reason, Peter doesn't ask the question himself, gets John to ask. And it's, yeah, Jesus says this, oh, it's the one I'm giving the bread to. But did he say it loud enough for everyone to hear? Or did he just like whisper? It's like, oh, it's the one I'm giving the bread to. And he goes, but then, like, even when he does and Judas leaves, wouldn't you think John would be like, oh my gosh, it's him. Jesus just gave him the bread. Like,
It really
We
is
would.
that
Like-
obvious, though, and it feels like there's got to be so much subcontext in there that we're not understanding, and it can come back to maybe for the disciples, they felt like he was the most trusted. I've always kind of felt like Jesus picked him on purpose, not because he was the most trusted, but because he knew that people would relate it that way, and so you just can't, you got to be careful of
Yeah.
anybody. I don't know. That was a sidetrack of speculation.
what's really interesting to me is getting past the how much they didn't see it coming, and that no one suspected Judas. It's crazy.
Not even when they're calling
But,
him out. It's the
um,
guy I'm handing the paper to. Who? Yeah, I mean, that is the scenario, and it's
And it's
not.
like, even when that happens and he immediately gets up and leaves, they're like, oh, I guess he's going to pay the bill.
Yeah, that's exactly what they think. He's gonna go pay the bill. He's gonna go help the
You didn't
poor.
have anybody sitting there going,
Maybe he ran away because he just got called out.
yeah, like, can we think about this? What just happened? What did he just say?
But
What did he just do?
What I love about it though is even though they don't get it, and it does, I like that Ron brought up the betrayal part of it, because again, Peter comes in and he's like, I'd die for you. And Jesus kind of scoffs at them. He's like, you're going to betray me 3 times before the end of the night. And I've always read this. It's not as if Jesus is scoffing so much at the I'd die for you thing, because at the end of the day, he does. And Jesus knows that's going
Right?
to come.
That's a good point. Wow.
But I feel like what Jesus is really scoffing at is, I don't want you to die for me. I want you to live for me.
Wow.
And you're going to betray me 3 times before the night's over, but I still want you to live for me.
Wow.
Skipping ahead on me. We'll
I
get
am.
there.
My bad. That's the last verse.
We're in section 3 because this is really significant to me. It's a thing that I only noticed about a year ago. That it's like it pivots at this moment that Jesus tells Judas, what you're going to do, go ahead and do it. And Judas leaves, and no one picks up on Judas leaving. But that's the moment when Jesus enters into the new level of teaching. There's so much of the things that we remember from Jesus that is like the key, pivotal, most important teaching that we ever got from Jesus that's repeated throughout the rest of the New Testament that happens now after Judas left.
That's
He
right.
waited until Judas left
And to give them
start
a
giving,
new commandment.
Here's the new commandment.
Wow, I've never
And-
noticed that. Got to get them out of there before you start giving the instructions.
Which is one that's in Proverbs, it's in 1 Corinthians. There are multiple times where it talks about that. It's like in Proverbs, it's something along the lines of remove the wicked from the king's court and
then have your
and
conversation.
and then the kingdom can be secure or something. But it's like you've got to get rid of the people that aren't real, that aren't trustworthy. And it's Jesus knew that Judas.
And those people always show
was false.
themselves, even today. They do. I mean, not trying to tell you to be skeptical of the world or the people that are around you, but I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. There are a lot of people you can go to when you're in pain. That circle gets smaller when you're in joy. When you're celebrating, who celebrates with you?
Right.
And it's just,
It's true.
it's a thing
sad.
that stuck out to me. It's crazy that the Bible teaches this repeatedly. Then it's like the importance of, we've got to get rid of it. Proverbs elsewhere call it like removing the dross from the silver so you have something pure.
Mm-hmm.
And getting
It's always
the people,
about purifying.
getting the wicked out and
Purity,
stuff. And but the Bible teaches us multiple times that this is an important thing. But if anybody tried to do that in our day and age, you would be roasted alive as the most like judgmental bigot ever.
You'd get canceled.
Well, especially
And-
our society today is all about inclusion
Mm-hmm.
and acceptance.
Well, and here's
So
the
that's
thing:
if
is
you were to draw a line and be like,
nothing here is
Yeah.
saying don't get the wicked away from you in all situations. It's saying get the wicked away from you when you are in your ministry, when you are representing me. I mean, he's around the wicked
all
through
the
his
time.
whole
Yeah.
ministry. So it's not about getting them out of your life. It's about getting them out of your circle and out of your
wow.
Yeah, being careful
being
who
careful
has the ability
who-
to speak into you.
Yes,
Exactly. I was gonna say
that.
that sheds some new light on the concept of having healthy boundaries.
Yes.
Really is what it boils down to.
And
Not
that's
as-
really what it is. This is
not-
like a boundary that
It's a
Jesus
boundary
demonstrates.
that
He
Jesus
gets Judas to
demonstrates.
leave and then shares his
I
most
love
important
how he
stuff.
says it. He's like, "You're gonna do it. Go ahead and go. Go do what you're gonna do." We know that is very casual the way I hear him say
But
that.
I've never seen it like that before until now. Like, oh, that's boundaries.
Oh,
And
yeah.
For us, today,
Jesus had boundaries. He'd get in a boat and still talk to people to
Sure.
show his boundaries. I mean,
Yeah, it's just crazy to me. It's just like you must love each other just as I have loved you. That's like one of the hallmark Jesus things. And that comes just a few verses after he gets Judas to leave.
Wow.
Well, what's beautiful about this to me, and this is something that we need to learn in our society today. When people don't agree with you about political or even religious view or anything, when people do not agree with you about anything, the way that they know that you belong to Jesus is not about your Facebook post, and it is not about how you told them that they should do better. It is about how we love them. They will know you by how you love them.
And that's the verse that
And the thing that I recently realized is the way that you will love them, not in spite of your differences, but in
the
in
differences.
the middle of the differences.
That's
We're still
different and it's
cool.
okay. Yes.
It's okay.
I'm not trying to change you while I'm accepting you.
It's still so baffling to me how many people are just besides themselves and blown away if you dare to love them in the midst of that kind of thing. It confuses the crap out of them.
and
It
They
does.
don't know what to do with that kind of love.
it's an important thing to not like overlook the differences.
Right.
Don't act
It's-
like it's not there, because that's actually less loving.
It is.
Loving is acknowledging that difference and saying, yeah, this is here. Like Dee Dee said, it's absolutely right here. It is forefront. It's completely in between us, but I'm loving you through this difference. And I'm totally acknowledging how much we don't see eye to eye, but I love you anyway.
Well, and who
And-
Jesus is talking about when he says they will know you, he's talking about people who don't yet know him. So,
Mhm.
so who Jesus is referring to as who they are that will know you, or people who don't know him. So they're those people. They are those people in that group that you identify in whatever way. Those are the people he is saying they will know me by the way you love. And I feel like we get that wrong every single day. Me too.
And it's a thing that's worth noting in this, that he doesn't say they will know you're my disciple by how you love them, but it's by how you love each
Love.
other. And
Yeah.
it's like basically the way you Christians get along with other Christians is what's going to demonstrate how real this is.
We're
Not
watching. Yeah.
not how much,
Yeah, we're
like,
really good
not,
at that one
not
too.
how well you come and serve at the homeless shelter or whatever. And it's like, that's nice. That's humanitarian. Good for you. I appreciate it. But that's not what's demonstrating this. What really demonstrates is how well we get along with each other.
Mhm.
Case in point, I have a few comments, and I'll circle back to you guys. The thing that jumped out in my mind and just about brought me to tears as you were saying that is, like, for example, seeing somebody that has been in ministry and leadership in the church for a while come forward during baptism and say,
I love that. It's one of my favorite
You know what?
things. Oh my
God
gosh.
convicted me, and I haven't taken this step yet. But not just that; it goes much further.
It's so
Being
much deeper.
being someone who was there, witnessing the leadership, openly accept that, no judgment, only love. That is what
Yes.
that is what they are looking for. That
There
is what
shouldn't be
they are
questions
observing.
after it of who. Yeah.
That
Sorry.
is what they are observing in the church, in the Christian leadership, the Christian world. Because we've always said we will roast our own alive.
Oh yeah.
We will so quickly do it, but it's so noteworthy when we love instead.
Yes.
And so that's something that we got to witness this weekend at church, watching the
How did
worship
you
leader
love?
come forward and admit. And they're like, "Well, come on!" And
We got the
And
water.
we're
Let's do
we're gonna
this.
celebrate it. Yeah.
zero judgment, and I'm like, "That's how it should be," and that's what they need to see.
Well, and
That's how they
it's
will know.
it's not just zero
You're the real
judgment,
deal about
but it's
Jesus Christ's love.
intense celebration
Oh, yeah.
because that is
It was beautiful. There were tears. There was like multiple waves of cheering. it was insane.
It was like after the service was over, and like people just kind of like lots of people
Right.
came back, and
It was the coolest thing ever. But that is, in my mind, that's the new picture.
I love it.
They'll know we are Christians by our love and what you guys were just talking about amongst each other.
Yeah.
Because we are brutal with each other.
Yep.
It's like, if anybody knows of it, feel free to call me out, because I'm not perfect on this, but I don't know of anywhere that says that the Testament is how we love the world around us, but it's how we love our fellow believers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
It's our unity, our love for one another.
and even if it's got to be both and, because our love for
But-
one another is something. I'm not saying it's got to be both and. It's got to be the other believers if it's nothing else. If it's only one or the other, he is talking about the other believers. But what he's saying when he says they, he means those people, the people you put in groups, the people you feel like shouldn't be in church, the people you feel like aren't worthy. Those are the people who are going to know you, and they're going to know you by how you love. And we just
But they are more,
we do such a bad job of it
They're-
with social media.
they're more concerned. Let's take the social media example. I contend that it makes a bigger, it is a bigger failing
Yeah.
for, like, this church to tear down that church, or tearing
Yes.
down this Christian leader or whatever, than it is to be tearing down your they group.
Yes.
Like, to see people claiming the name of Jesus and ripping apart whatever group they think is not okay is wrong, but that is less hypocritical than the Christians ripping apart other Christians.
I heard it said not long ago, and I completely forget who said it, and I've heard it a lot of different ways, but somebody said you cannot win an argument. You can be correct in an argument, but you will always lose the relationship, no matter what happens with that. There is no winner in an argument, and it's a true story, because even if you're the correct person,
Okay, then.
you've probably lost the relationship. That's not a win.
Yeah. That's true. All right, sorry. I do have a few comments.
Yes, give me comments.
I'm going to read them off. So circle back when we can. Tanya said a few minutes ago, knowing who you are in Jesus and don't allow others to change that. I was just speaking this into one of our students last week. Ron said, loving without an objective.
Yes.
Mhm.
And
Yes. Loving without an objective. How often have you gotten that in your life?
right? And then Tanya said, the world thinks if we as Christians say we love them, then we have to agree with them on everything. That's a really good point.
That is a good
the
point.
other side of this coin, that we have a very skewed concept of what love looks like. We
Oh.
think, oh, well, if you love me, you'll let me da da da.
And I think that circles back to the beginning of the chapter with him washing the feet. He's like, this is what I'm doing the demonstration.
This is why
love,
I'm showing you.
to
what
show
love
It's
you
is.
not
love
to agree,
is-
it's to show you. Yeah, it's not to say everything. I believe everything you're doing is correct. I've said for so long, my favorite people are people who disagree with me on big stuff like politics and religion, and they really want to be friends anyway. I learn more from those people than I would from anybody who agrees with my perspectives.
I think Jesus is showing, like, love is to care for people, to meet the real needs
Yes.
that each other has. And it's like, love
be
doesn't,
the
yeah, love
church.
doesn't mean I agree with everything you do and I applaud your every decision no matter what it is. That's not love. But love is, I'm actually meeting your true needs.
That was Ron's last comment. He said, we are
Yeah.
called to be and make disciples. To me, the definition.
And it's, so, which is basically to the third question, what
Yeah.
makes Jesus kind of love different from how people typically love? This is some of the stuff we've just been saying. And it's like, oh, well, we think that love means this. And we think that, oh, love means that you'll let me live rent free in your house. Love means that
No,
you will
it does
support everything that
not.
I do. Love means that, like, we
Yeah.
twist all of what it is, and, like, both on the giving and the
Hard.
receiving end of it.
Mhm.
Like,
It's really hard sometimes.
and
But
we'll
what-
say that we love this person, but we don't have a single positive thing to say about them.
Yes. Oh my
And-
gosh.
Like,
Mm. If you don't got
It's what
nothing
I
nice to
really
say,
think. It's
keep your
I don't know.
mouth
It's the thing
shut.
that's really sticking out to me here tonight. That it's this idea of when he's talking about love one another. He's saying within the group, it's love each other, love the fellow believers. Like First John makes it abundantly clear. So does some of Paul's letters. I can't remember exactly where, but it's obvious that like it doesn't stop with fellow believers. It's not like, oh, we love each other and to heck with everybody else. That's
Yeah.
not it. Because to go and make disciples, like my dad said, and it's like that's the definition of love. It's
But the
reaching
way
out to
you
them
make
and rescuing
disciples
them,
is by
but it's-
showing them how you love.
but
It-
like the love spills out to
It's-
them.
that's-
That it's a
yes.
natural consequence of the love that we have on the inside.
If we
like,
love each other, it will
if the love
overflow.
within our within the Christianity group, within the
Right.
Jesus followers,
That's kind of
if we
show
truly love one another, like
how you
this is school, this is the training ground. We learn to love each other, and when you love here, that love teaches you to love there, and it's the way we love here that convinces that person out there that there's anything worthwhile in here.
Yeah.
They don't want to be a disciple of Jesus. They don't care about anything we've got to offer if it doesn't even make us get along with each other.
Right?
Well, and to add to that point, like a coattail perspective of it is, how much good are we going to do as the church if we are just arguing amongst ourselves? Not only does that also spill out and the community sees that negatively as well, but
Right.
we're not, when we love each other and we're not bickering and arguing, we have so much time to do good things and to reach people with good news, as
Mhm.
opposed to all of this consumed space that we
Exactly.
use.
Yep.
Ah,
Wow.
And so there's just a few verses left, but they're big, and they're, let's face it, they're setting up a story later on.
mhm.
But it's because Simon asks, Lord, where are you going? Jesus says, you can't go with me now, but later on you will, which goes to Jen's point that it's like, I don't think Jesus was scoffing at him going, yeah, right, you'll die for me. But he's, because he just said, later on,
You're
you will
gonna
follow
get it.
me.
You're
You're
gonna
going
know."
to come with me. But it's like, in the very next sentence, he's like, I mean, you're not going to make it through tonight, but later on, you will follow
I
me.
love that. He's kind of like scoffing, die for me. You're going to betray me 3 times before tonight's over. But I've always seen that die for me as that's not what I want from you. I want you to live for me. Because it's what they all went out and did from here is they lived for him. And what an impact that made on the world.
And it's just this stuff of it showcases that they're still just as confused. Jesus has washed their feet and said, God will bless you for doing these things. Well, not all of you. And then whisper something with John. Judas leaves, and then he starts saying, love one another. And it's like, this is the new command I'm giving you, which
The
we
new
kind of glossed
commandment
right
is a
past that. But the
big
idea of
part
saying a
it.
new
Yeah.
command I'm giving you, that's a huge thing, especially in Judaism.
Yep.
And it's
Because
like
the commands
people
were,
don't get to give commands.
Nope.
And
They
it's
were
like-
literally written in stone.
And-
And the ones that weren't were very much.
And for Jesus to say, I'm giving you a new command. And there's so much context around it that we simply don't have time to unpack. But in the context of the meal that they're sharing and
Mhm.
what's happening, and this is like the day before Passover, like there's so much going on here. And in this context, for him saying, I'm giving you a new command, it was clear to them, he's not saying, yeah, you've got the 637 laws that you have to follow and all this stuff, so I figure we could use one more. But it's like,
It's almost
he
like,
says, no,
get
here's
rid of that.
a
This
new
is-
command.
This is.
It's like,
It's the
you've heard of this
command.
stuff. You know all these rules and laws and regulations and all the stuff and the ceremonial washings and the things. I've got a new one. Like, here's a new way. I'm giving you a new way to approach life, a new way to
And it
even
encompasses
think
all.
of what love is. Think of what holiness and relationship with God is.
Mhm.
That's what he's like. And it's just in the way and in the time and place that it's said, that was the message, and that's what they even recognized him saying there, which once again still just totally confused the living daylights out of them, because they're like, wait, you're pushing the reset button and giving us a whole new thing? Like, how does that work? Can you do that? Like, and but it's,
Mhm.
and this is what, only in hindsight, only when Jesus explained things to them after the resurrection and showed, and it's like, I've fulfilled all of this, and this is the new thing. Like,
Can you
it's,
imagine the conversations after that? They're like, oh, remember when?
oh yeah,
Oh,
they spent 40 days with Jesus connecting dots, and they're going, oh,
That's
okay.
what you meant.
And,
All right, that
but-
tracks.
and then they spent the rest of their lives with the Holy Spirit pointing things out, and they're like, oh, that
Oh.
conversation makes so much more sense now. And like,
Get it.
but for him saying, I'm giving you a new command, was like, I'm giving you a whole new way to live.
Yeah.
And that new command is love one another. And it's like, there's all these things, and there's all the stuff and the do's and the don'ts and the rules and the dot the I's and cross the T's. And it's like, love one another. That's the new command I'm giving you. And it's John who wrote this. You go and read his other letters later on, and that's all he says over and over and over. That's what he was known for at the end of his life. That's the only message he would give. Like, when he was the respected elder, he's John the Elder. He's the last surviving apostle, and he was there in Ephesus, and people were like, oh my gosh, John, speak to us, give us a word. And, you walked and talked with Jesus. And all he would ever say is, children, love one another.
Love.
He would say that, and he would
Love.
leave, and they didn't know what to do. And that was the only thing he was willing to say. That was the only message that matters, is
But when he
love one
went and
another.
defined love in Corinthians, I mean, it is very specific. He doesn't hold records of wrongs. Go read it. What is it?
1 Corinthians 13.
Corinthians 13. It's the definition of what real love is. And if you look at that as, do I hold a record of wrongs? Do I love, am I patient? Am I kind? Am I, am I those things? Because that is what love is.
Mm.
Anyway, I'm in whole different chapters.
No, it's actually perfect.
Whole different books, not just chapters. We're skipping the books.
Wrap my end of it with saying that's something I was talking to Isaac about. Like, we were actually in the middle of a heated discussion, bordering an argument, blow up, about the kind of friends he's choosing, and I was like, let me ask you guys, is this person nice at all? Like, you really think is he nice? And we have the fruits of the spirit written out
I
on
love
our
that.
little board in there, because he was memorizing that for his church class. And I looked over his shoulder. I'm like, how about that? We've just memorized the fruits of the spirit. Does this person demonstrate any of that? I'm like, and while we're asking,
Do you demonstrate?
right now in this moment, discuss like where an encounter with this person has taken us and our
Mhm.
family. It's affected us, and we are lacking some of these things. That's how toxic this can be. And so helping him understand that, but it's pretty much what you guys were just talking about. Us too. We need to really hold ourselves up to that and go, am I really living this out?
Am I?
And that's exactly how it is, the new command.
Mhm.
That it's, no, this is a command. This isn't like a nifty idea. This isn't philosophy. This is a command. Love one another. And
Here's how you do it.
he has just begun his final masterclass of demonstrating what that love means, what he means when he says love one another. He started it with washing their feet. Like, within about 24 hours from now, he's hanging on the cross and dead. And it's like, he is showing, and it was at the beginning of this chapter that it says, like, he loved them, and now at the end, he
He loved them till the
loved them
end.
to the very end. He had
He
always loved his
he'd always
followers, and he loved them to the very end.
Yep.
And that it's, and what's crazy and meaningful is that phrase is spoken when Judas is in the mix.
Mhm.
He had always loved them. That included Judas.
Mhm.
And he washed their feet before Judas left. He washed Judas's feet too.
Wow.
And like, this is what he means by love. Love the person you know darn well is going to
Love your
betray you.
enemies is the hardest kind of love.
Yeah.
Love your enemies. Love someone that hates you. Love someone that wants to destroy you.
Love someone that is actively in the process of destroying you.
I feel like it's important to note that he also got rid of him, because if someone is abusing you and treating you badly and doing this betrayal thing on a regular basis, it's not love doesn't mean you allow that toxic person to stay.
Amen.
Jesus got rid of him.
And it's kind of
He
circling
loved him, but he loved him away from
back,
him.
right? But circling back to the concept of no, boundaries are necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries in place does not mean that you hate, does not mean that you're not loving.
Yeah.
In fact,
Judas never got to
means
see Jesus
love.
He
drop
got-
that
yeah.
veil and take it to this next level.
Yeah.
And see, Judas never heard the new command.
Yeah. He was out of the room.
He was
so.
out,
Yeah.
yeah. But
You know,
anyway.
it's very easy for us to like, as Christians, and I hear it from a lot of churches I've been to, a lot of groups I've been part of. It's very easy to hate on Judas, and deservedly
Sure.
so. What he did was ridiculously wrong. But how is Judas any worse than, you know, the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin, or the people that sold Jesus out to the Romans? How is he any worse than the Romans that actually did the act of murdering him? You know, so
Mhm.
it kind of puts a lot of stuff in perspective for me that, you know, how would Jesus love those Romans and love the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees, but like, you know, hate Judas so much? You know what I mean? So because everyone gives him a bad rap, and like I said, deservedly so. But at the same time, it's like, because we'll say stuff like, you know, I might be bad, but I'm not as bad as that Judas guy. You know what I mean? At least I'm not Judas.
Anytime
you
you've
know
got
what
to
I mean?
compare your sin to somebody else's sin, let me just go ahead and tell you that is God telling you your sin is bad, and you're just trying to get out of it. So stop that, because what somebody else does has no bearing on how good or how bad you are.
Yeah, but you know how, I mean,
Yeah.
there's just a lot of people
Yeah.
that,
Oh, yeah.
that don't understand that, heck, we've sinned. We're the reason, one of the main, I'm the reason Jesus got on the cross.
Sin
You're
is
the
sin.
reason Jesus got on
Mhm.
the cross. Judas is the reason Jesus got on the cross. Peter, who denied him, is the reason Jesus got on the cross. The Romans that murdered him is the reason Jesus got on the cross. And the Jews that sold him to the Romans to be killed are the reason Jesus got on that cross.
And it's
So,
and Jesus hung on the cross saying, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're
They know
doing.
not what they
And
do.
like, and I can't imagine Judas not being in his mind at that, with that. Like, he's like, Judas didn't know what he was doing any more than these guys know what they're doing.
A lot of people speculate
And-
that he went to hell. I don't know that that's true.
None of us know that
Nobody
for sure.
knows that that's true. I mean,
Um,
there you can speculate. Here's the thing: at a funeral, everybody went to heaven. But come on now, I mean,
No matter who it was, they're in a better place.
they're in a better place at the funeral. But let's be real. All these Christians talking about you're going to hell, it's got to be true about somebody.
But
Sorry, that was way bad to go.
but like, yeah, Judas's
Oh,
sin and his crime is not objectively any worse than Peter's denial and
Nope.
betrayal. Jesus calls them both betrayal. He uses the same word for both of them.
and I love
And,
that.
like,
I love that.
The only preacher had pointed out so many times, the only difference is that Judas gave up and hung himself. Peter
Peter-
thought he was doomed. He didn't try to come back, but Jesus brought him back. Peter at least just stayed there, and Jesus had a chance to bring him back.
Mhm.
It's who can say what would have happened with Judas had he not killed himself?
Exactly. He could have.
Jesus probably. I
That would have
think
been a
it's
heck of a
a given
story.
that Jesus would have come and sought for Judas. Like his whole thing, the parable of the lost coin and the lost sheep and the lost son.
If
Like
that's the lost one,
if
yeah.
Jesus is telling those stories, he would have sought out Judas if Judas had just simply still been alive.
Yeah.
Which is another important point to say if we're putting things out on the internet. No matter who you are, no matter what situation you're in, if you're thinking about giving up, don't. Because
God's
Jesus
not done.
can and will reach out to you
Yep.
and give him a chance to do that.
Yes.
Like, don't
Give him a chance.
end it, because that actually ends his opportunity to reach you.
Amen.
if you need somebody to talk to, I'll reply. I'll be happy to message us. If you are there, don't be there. You're not alone. You're not alone.
multiple people in this room right now have been there.
Yep.
And
We got hands raised.
and
Y'all
we-
can't see them.
and we are like, the only reason we're still in this room is from simply, what was it? Sorry, my brain does weird things. It's Sleepless in Seattle that he had the line that is like, it was just to get up another day and keep breathing in and out all day long and do it again tomorrow. And it's
And-
like when you can't see anything beyond that, and that's all you can think, but it's like to simply do that.
Yep.
Is
Please get up another
that's
day.
what it takes to get up another day. The fact that you got up today, the fact that you got up today is evidence that God's not done with you. The fact that
That's
you're
right.
hearing this message is evidence that He's trying to reach you.
You've got such
And-
potential.
Like, it's always worth another day.
Yep.
And none of us know what Jesus is going to do in another day. These guys that we're reading had no idea what was going to happen within 24 hours. They certainly didn't know what was coming 3 days after that. Like, Jesus can do anything. Give him another day.
And it doesn't matter how far gone you are. Jesus prayed to forgive the people who crucified him. It doesn't matter what you have done. You can be redeemed. Anything is redeemable.
Mhm.
Absolutely anything. Salvation can't be earned. If it
Alright.
could be earned, it would cease to be a gift.
I have absolutely zero doubt. There's not a glimmer of doubt in my mind that had Judas come and asked Jesus for
Oh,
forgiveness, it's
absolutely.
there.
It would have been there. Yes, absolutely.
Like,
The only speculation that he could be in hell, the only reason my mind even is unsure is because it doesn't say that he repented. And I mean, we don't know. But absolutely, if he had asked, good grief, if he had asked without Jesus coming back first, I would
Mhm.
believe it. Because that's what God does, is he saves. That's why he was here. Sorry. I keep
No, I
going.
got nothing else. That's-
So I'm just sitting here
that's-
thinking, amen, and I am so thankful that he's a God who saves.
it's
I'm so thankful.
we never really hit our last question. This is kind of tangentially related to it, but it's can we prepare ourselves to remain faithful in difficult moments? We've been talking about just difficult moments and continuing on through it, but to remain faithful in difficult moments, I'm sorry, my answer for this is you can't prepare yourself to remain faithful in the difficult moments, because that's what makes them difficult, is you weren't ready for them. The
Yeah.
moments that you're ready for aren't the difficult ones. The difficult moments are the ones that completely catch you off guard and you're not strong enough for it.
I feel like it's this continuous test. It's this continuous testing that you never ace out of it. You never like, oh,
Oh,
A
heavens no.
plus, and I'm done. I've graduated. It's a continuous testing. Like case in point, what we were just talking about. Like I found myself, elevated and worked up and raw emotions and in an argument with our kid and looked over his shoulder and saw like fruits of the spirit. And it was in that moment. I'm like, it's a continual testing. It's a continual practicing. It's this continuous act of bringing yourself back and reteaching and relearning and practicing and working through it.
And
And I think it's stuff like that. You had your story of looking over his shoulder and seeing the fruits of the Spirit written on the wall. And I think that's honestly the answer. Now, I'm not saying you need to put stuff on your walls, although feel free.
God can
Um,
put it in front of you,
but,
but yeah, I like it on the wall.
But the key of it is, like, what enabled that moment is the fact that prior to that moment,
I mean,
had already had the groundwork of, yeah, we were working on this and we were memorizing this part and we were learning this. And it's exactly what we're doing now. It's opening the Bible, getting into it, and taking time to let it speak to you, to let Jesus speak to you, so that the next difficult thing that comes up, you've got these little nuggets that are squirreled away, and you might not consciously remember them between now and then, but like, if you don't get in there, you have no ammunition for anything to be in your mind, to
Right.
bring to mind in the moment when you need it. But when you do take the time and you make it a habit of reading and studying and gathering together and encouraging one another, like Hebrews says, that's how when you're in the difficult situation that you're not prepared for, you've got some background, you've got some foundation that you can lean into.
And you've got people who can hold you accountable in love when you are starting to go down the wrong path, because how great would it, everybody's gone down the wrong path. How great would it have been to have had someone who would pull us back in before we got down there to say, this is a better way for you. If we
Yeah.
had had someone we could listen to, and so to have those people that you trust and to hold you accountable are so important.
Which, two more things. One, that is a shameless plug for life groups.
Yes,
Because-
shameless plug for life
well,
groups.
case in point, when I was in my moment, I was having a parenting moment. I did that. I saw the fruits of the spirit. We talked each other down, kind of reconciled. Okay. And then I was still emotional, so I reached out to our life group and sent a prayer request. And it's something that they were able to jump into that with me, because I had previously mentioned a prayer request, like, hey, like parenting is so hard right now. We're trying to guide him in this. I had shared it days before. And so when this happened, I was able to reach out and be like, hey, I'm there again. Lift me up. So it's so important. It's so important to not do life alone for this very reason. But also, one last comment Ron said, it's a great thing to end on. Keep our eyes on Jesus and take one more step.
Yep. One more step. Just 1% better.
And that's how you prepare yourself. Like, you keep taking another step. You take another
Even
day,
if it's
take
a
another
little
step.
step. Some steps might be big and some steps might be really tiny.
As a friend in our
But
life
they're
group
all going to propel you forward.
is
My
constantly
friends in the life
saying,
group says, like, baby steps are steps.
Yep. All of them propel you forward. Just because not everything is a leap doesn't mean.
Leaning and listening.
Something is.
Oh yeah.
Some baby steps. Start taking baby steps.
all right.
All right. Well,
We've,
that was good.
we've had half a dozen viable places to land this plane.
We gotta land.
And I can't even call out like the key point of tonight other than love one another.
Yes.
But it's how that love takes shape is something that it takes a different shape every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a different shape as you grow, as you keep taking those steps, whether they're big ones or baby steps. Like, love looks different.
Mm-hmm.
It's stuff that we've talked about. And it's like, I look back on my teenage years and my high school girlfriend, who I know that I loved her so much. I'm like, oh, I can't believe I called that love. And but I also know that at the time I was dead serious, and I loved her as much as I was capable of loving. But I'm not that person anymore.
Right.
Love is a different thing now, because as you keep taking steps, it changes and it grows and it changes shape.
You've outgrown.
Well,
And we
you
need
can
we
love
need to keep going, and we
someone-
need to keep growing.
Absolutely. And you can love someone even if it's the most wonderful relationship in the world and it's great. It doesn't matter how wonderful they are. They're going to be unlovable at least some days.
Yep.
I mean, we just have to love through that and understand when we place a boundary. I mean, that's
So our takeaway is
so much.
love, and
Love.
let Jesus speak to you and show you what he means by love. He showed these guys by washing their feet. He'll show us in different ways. If Jesus shows up and washes your feet, tell me about it. I want to hear that story. But like, Jesus will show us as clearly as he showed them.
Yes.
He will teach you, he will speak to you if we give him an opportunity.
Yep.
So that's the prayer. Give him an opportunity to show you what love means and what he wants you to do to demonstrate that love. Let's
Amen.
pray. Lord, I just thank you for your love, for giving us the example of what it is to love, for showing us love that we never could have dreamed up on our own, that goes so far beyond anything we're capable of. And I pray that you will just continue to guide us as we all have different lives that are moving in different directions and interact with different people, but your love is the right thing. It's the prescription for every single one of those situations. And I pray that you will speak to our hearts, speak to everyone who hears this message, to show us just the next step of what love looks like and how we can live your love with each other and the people around us, and let your love change the world in our generation. Amen.
Amen. That was good. Thanks, guys.
All right, y'all. Thanks for joining us.
See you next week.
week.
Guys,
No, you're good.
Sure.